Good day to you each, my beautiful and wonderful people, on this wonderful Wednesday. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. It's your favorite girl, Simply Michelle, the host with the most. And I have an incredible episode lined up today. But first, don't forget to purchase your copy of one of my books or journals that's listed on Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. If you are looking for a mental health coach to walk with you on your journey to greatness, book your appointment now on my website at createdonpurpose4purpose.godaddysites.com because you matter and so does your mental health. Got a story you want to tell? Well, let's talk about it and let's get your book published, bringing your words to life and making your dream a reality. Now, do me a solid and hit that follow button and be sure to tell me what you think of today's episode. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode, Waiting in Captivity. Okay, so do y'all remember when the Lord told Moses to go and free the Israelites from Egypt? When we usually talk about this story, we only talk about Moses and the journey God had placed him on, and how he parted the Red Sea, and the manna God provided for the Israelites, and all the other great insights of the story. But no one ever talks about what the Israelites had to go through before Moses came to the rescue. So I decided, let's talk about it. In Exodus chapter 1, starting at the 8th verse, I'm going to be reading from the New Living Translation. It says, eventually, a new king came to power in Egypt who knew nothing about Joseph or what he had done. He said to his people, look, the people of Israel now outnumber us and are stronger than we are. We must make a plan to keep them from growing even more. If we don't, and if war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us. Then they will escape from the country. So the Egyptians made the Israelites their slaves. They appointed brutal slave drivers over them, hoping to wear them down with crushing labor. They forced them to build the cities as supply centers for the king. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more the Israelites multiplied and spread, and the more alarmed the Egyptians became. So the Egyptians worked the people of Israel without mercy. They made their lives bitter. They were ruthless in all their demands. Okay, so we're going to pause right here. Now, can you imagine this kind of life for yourself? Being a slave all because you were multiplying at a high rate. I can't see anyone being a slave to anyone for any reason, but to be done like that, you know what I mean? Just because they're, being fruitful and multiplying. But then if we jump over in Exodus 12 and 40, it states that the Israelites lived in Egypt for 430 years. Can you imagine going through all that hell as a slave for 430 years? I mean, we don't even live that long, you know what I mean? But, if we can just use our imagination, think about it. 430 years, you're a slave for 430 years. So when I was reading this story, it was clear to me that many feared God, like the midwives or whatever, they wouldn't obey the orders of Pharaoh. Now, I'd like to believe that the Israelites wanted to get out of Egypt, but they wasn't sure how that was actually going to happen. I would like to also think that they put their hope and trust in the Lord. I do believe, if I go back and take a look, that they did cry out to the Lord for help. But enduring those 430 years, the Israelites were in Egypt. Moses wasn't even born yet. I think it was maybe, like the last 80 years of that 430 bid. You know what I mean? Moses had to be born, he had to grow up, and he had to be prepared for this task. And in the meantime, the Israelites were, still crying out to God with some sort of hope that he would save them. Moses' parents had to abandon him at 3 months old so that Pharaoh's daughter could find him and raise him as her own, which means to me, he learned everything he needed to know from the Egyptians, not knowing that later down the line, God would use that for him, for his good in order to free the Israelites. Now, to me, this was all a part of the preparation for Moses to free the people, a strategic and divine move of God. Just as I said before, waiting is not always a bad thing. I understand it's hard to see the bigger picture, when you are actually waiting and you have no idea what's going on, just as the Israelites were feeling. But at some point, we have to know that if God allowed it, then he already has a resolution set in place and, for the Israelites, and that resolution was Moses. Verse 17 says, as part of what the Lord was saying to Moses, I have promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt. I will lead you to a land flowing with milk and honey. You may not have had to wait 430 years for something or go through half of what the Israelites had gone through in that time. But the same promise God promised to them are the same promises for us. He will rescue us from our sufferings, and he will lead us to our land flowing with milk and honey. We just have to trust him in the process of waiting and do what is required of us. You don't have to like or agree with how God does things, but your obedience does require your participation rather than your understanding or liking of the situation. It's just like, when you work for a company, you don't always like the policies. You don't always like your coworkers, your boss, and you may not agree with a lot of the policies that are set in place or what your boss may do. But you get up every morning and go to work so that you can get that paycheck. That is the same with God. In my book, Created on Purpose for Purpose, we talk about the 4 P's. The purpose, the plan, the process, and the promise. And you cannot get to the promise before the process, and the process takes place while you're in a waiting season. Now, even after the Israelites, were freed from Egypt and they saw the hand of God moving in their favor, they were so immune to how they were treated in slavery. The Israelites complained about Moses and Aaron in Exodus 16:3, basically saying, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food, we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Now, when miracles were happening and all seemed to be looking good and going in, their favor, they worshiped the Lord. They were happy. But now when they are getting close to the land that was promised to them and they don't see, this was a benefit to them, they feel some kind of way. And that's exactly how we are. Well, you know what? Let's just talk about me. That is how I got sometimes. When I couldn't see God moving, and truth be told, there are times now I may fall victim to this, but God always seems to get me right. If we look further down in chapter 16, God told Moses he was going to test the Israelites to see if they would be obedient. He told them they would have all the bread they needed during the morning and meat in the evening. They listened, but then he told them not to save anything for the next day. But they didn't listen to that part. And when they got up the next morning, there was maggots in their food and stuff. So how many times have God provided and we were still trying to pinch here and there to ensure that we had enough for tomorrow? I mean, personally, I've been there and I've done that. You know what I mean? Because, of course, I run a single parent household and it's been a struggle. You know what I mean? And so, as the primary breadwinner of my home, I had to ensure my children were taken care of. I had to ensure bills were taken care of. I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. And at this point, you know what I mean? Peter getting upset. He like, stop robbing me just to pay Paul. Paul walking around here rich. You know what I mean? But that was me. I was grateful for everything God's done for me. I could see the hand of God over my life. I can see how God provided for me. But in my human sense, it was like, this is all I'm working with. I put a little here, I put a little there, I put a little over here. I gotta save some for this. Who knows what, the kids may need down the line. And then next thing you know, I still have to end up using it because I was operating out of myself and not trusting God. Matthew 6:34 clearly tells us, so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today. Just as the Israelites, what is it going to take for us to completely trust God? Are we going to complain the whole time we are waiting, or are we going to let God be God? God doesn't expect us to be perfect in our wait, y'all. But at some point, as we elevate, our faith should elevate as well. And if we are still talking about having mustard seed faith, then I think it's time, that we reevaluate our relationship with Christ, because I know God has done wonderful things in my life, and I know he's done it in your life as well. And by now, we should have some sort of rapport built with Jesus. Luke 12:48 says, but someone who does not know and then does something wrong will be punished only lightly. But here's the part I want us to catch. When someone has given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, even more will be required. None of us are exempt in our waiting period. We all must wait for something that we have asked God for. Because think about it, in our everyday lives, we have to wait for something, whether it's to catch the city or school bus, wait for a train to pass, we get caught at those trains, we wait for our children to grow up and leave home and become successful as we've prayed their entire life. We have to wait until payday to get those shoes we've been eyeballing. Whatever the case is, everyday life, there is something we have to wait for. We cannot become so immune, to longer wait times, that we lose focus of the goal ahead. If you lose focus on the goal ahead, then the wait will be excruciating. You know what I mean? So we have to stay focused in Christ and keep our eyes on Christ. In this season, give all of your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. He will never leave nor forsake you in this time or any other time to be exact. Don't be like the Israelites. Once they got free, once they have gotten out, they began to complain, here and there. And, don't be like them. Yes, 430 years is a long time to wait for something. And it's kind of like when you've been waiting for so long, like those extended wait times, it's kind of like when you began to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we want to just go ahead and just jump on everything. We want to move fast, we want to move ahead of God. But we have to understand we cannot do that. We get excited, we see the light, we like, man, finally. But we still have to wait on God. He's given us instructions day by day, moment by moment on how to move. He's giving us, the provision of what's going to take place and what he needs our cooperation on. We can't just expect God to do every single thing. Faith without works is dead. We can't ask God for a job and we're not willing to put in the applications or submit resumes. It's just not going to fall out of the heavens. But I do believe that sometimes, God will place people in front of us that will say, hey, I got this job opening. You know how you just be in general conversation? Because when it's for you, and it will find you. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, God can use people to bless your life. And we have to take down that pride as well. And many don't like asking for help because oftentimes help want to judge you. Help got 1,001 questions. And at this point, it's kind of like, I just want to know yes or no. Are you going to be able to help me? And this is why a lot of people suffer in silence because of how many are treated when they do decide to, let their guard down, let the pride down and ask for help, and then people still mistreat them. So, don't get discouraged, because what I had to find out, because I was one of them people, I got shot down a lot. You know what I mean? Not to say nobody ever helped me, because I'd be telling a tale. But I have got shut down a lot, even with asking for help. And if I didn't get shut down, I got talked about. I was drilled further into the ground. But then what God had to show me was, it's not that, you're not, asking for the help because, you have not because you ask not. You know what I mean? It's the fact that you're asking the wrong people. You didn't come to me, you know what I mean, and allow me to guide you to the people that you're asking this help from. I don't know where any of that came from, you know what I mean? I'm not for sure, I do kind of see how it ties into waiting, but, somebody else needed to know this. We everything that we do, we have to wait for God. We stay in communication with him, see how he needs us, to walk in a specific manner. What corner do you want me to turn? Do you want me to keep straight? Do you want me to go left? Do you want me to go right? What is it that you want me to do today? How can I, get myself closer to the things that you've called me to do? And sometimes he'll just tell you to just be still and know that I am God. That's still an answer. And that is still an action that you should take, whether you understand it or not. So I encourage us, don't get discouraged in the wait, saying it again throughout this whole, season. It's not easy. And you're going to get weary. It's the devil's job, to try to wear us out and help and make us lose hope in Christ. But we have to keep going. We have to get up every single day, just as we do these jobs, and we have to put forth the effort in knowing that God is not a liar. And if he said it, he's obligated to do it. If he did it for the Israelites, he will do it for us. Again, give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. He will never leave you or forsake you. And that's all I have for today's episode. I thank you guys so very much for tuning in. And I truly, truly hope you found encouragement, motivation, guidance, and inspiration to live a life aligned with your true purpose. Do not forget to tune in every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, because this is a season you don't want to miss. I want you guys to remember you are unique and there's a purpose waiting to be fulfilled within you. Don't let it go unnoticed or unexplored. Now you go and have a great day on purpose. See you next time.